The military order of the Temple was founded in Jerusalem around 1118 to defend the holy sites in Palestine. Aided by the Knights of the Temple during the Christian reconquest, Afonso Henriques, the first king of Portugal, donated them the lands of Tomar in 1160. The first Portuguese Grand Master Gualdim Pais ordered the construction of the castle, an outpost at the frontier lines at that time by the river Tagus. The convent was founded and became the seat of the Order of the Temple in Portugal. The fortified structure discloses novel solutions imported from the Middle East, such as the sloping base of the wall called alambor, and the keep, the first one to be built in Portugal. With an unusual rotunda shape, the charola was the convent church. Its circular design could have been inspired by the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. The battlements circled the Al-Medina, the former Arab settlement that was transferred outside the walls in the 16th century by King Manuel. Becoming overly powerful, the Order of the Temple was abolished in 1312 by Pope Clement V. This extinction wasn't convenient for Portugal, and so King Denis shrewdly founded the Order of Christ, to whom he transferred the wealthy heritage of the Templar. In 1420, Prince Henry the Navigator became the Grand Master of the new order and used its wealth to finance the Portuguese discoveries. Between the castle and the charola, he built his palace, spending there long periods of time, and added 2 cloisters to the convent. In 1510, Diogo de Arruda was commissioned by King Manuel to build up a new church adjoining the charola within an epoch of strong royal power statement and of renewal in art tendencies. In the western facade, illuminating the chapter house, the famous Manueline window symbolizes the tree of life and the tree of Jesse according to the scriptures. It is the exaltation of the imperial program of King Manuel, the king who saw himself as a ruler of man under God's providential choice. The lower floor of the church worked as the convent's chapter house for the monks' meetings. The upper choir was completed along with the vault of the upper floor by João de Castilho in 1515. The charola turned into a main chapel and was then enhanced with a complex and exuberant decorative program allusive to the Passion of Christ and the Sorrowful Virgin through a set of polychromatic ornamental elements and gilded ribbings. Today, there are only 7 out of the 14 original paintings on wood ascribed to the royal painter Jorge Afonso. The wooden sculptures were made by the Flemish artist Olivier de Gam. João de Castilho is also the author of the amazing Southern Portal, whose iconography illustrates the prophetic correspondence between the Old and the New Testament. King Manuel also built a chapter house for the Templars' meetings in Portugal. Actually, it never had a roof, and when Philip II of Spain was proclaimed king in the courts held in here, it was covered for the occasion with ship sails. In 1529, King João III determined a major reform of the Order of Christ that lost by that time its military calling and returned to its original spiritual purity. And then the convent reaches a grandiose scale. An enormous monastic complex with 4 large cloisters was built by João de Castilho. This unusual, versatile architect introduced the new language of Renaissance and the rational organization of space. The 2-story dormitories formed a cross among the cloisters, and the 40 cells were heated by an ingenious warmed air system. At the intersection of the aisles stands the crossing. In its decoration, Castilho reveals his closest approach to classical models. In the chapel of Senhor da Cana Verde, a sculpture in terracotta called Ecce Homo dates from 1654. The coffers on the vault display variations on the theme of bewilderment in the world. The refectory is a long room with a barrel vault and 2 high pulpits for sacred readings at mealtimes. The various aspects of monastic everyday life, study, hosting, administration, charity, were reflected in the space's layout around each cloister. Assistance to the poorest was given in the cloister of Misha. The upper floor of the hostelry cloister was intended to accommodate guests and pilgrims, and in the ground floor were the quarters of the servants and the stables. The library and the scriptorium opened to the cloister of the Crows. This was the area devoted to the monk's solitude, reading, study, and prayer. The majestic main cloister is a masterpiece of European Renaissance inspired by Italian architectural models. Designed by Diogo de Torralva, it has the particularity of being superposed on the original cloister by João de Castilho. Reflecting a shift in taste, the first Renaissance language used by Castilho turns into a more sophisticated classicism. The result is a body of galleries of great transparency, a whole new solution in the Iberian Peninsula, where the light and shadow effects on the surfaces reinforces the solemn expression and the scale grandeur. In the novitiate, the chapel of the Mages served as an oratory for the novices who were preparing to take their religious vows. This chapel inspired the design of Nossa Senhora da Conceição Chapel, built near the convent. Begun by Castilho and completed by Torralva, this chapel is another remarkable masterpiece of the Renaissance style and discloses one of the most sophisticated and beautiful interior decoration of Portuguese architecture. The Philippine dynasty prosecuted the works at the convent, and the new sacristy was built. The Porto Carreiros chapel dates from this period. Designed by Italian engineer Filippo Terzi, the aqueduct built to supply water to the convent was completed in 1619 for the visit of King Philip III of Spain. After the restoration of independence, King Pedro II ordered the construction of the hospital. This was the final addition to the monastic complex, built in a sober and plain style. The 39 walled acres of the wood of Sete Montes frames the convent enclosure. Besides its mythical connection to the Templar order, the Convent of Christ holds still today its architectural integrity and the charm of a particular landscape. The Convent of Christ is inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List.